Turn now to that attempted assassination on Donald Trump and bring in Professor Simon Jackman from the University of Sydney. We spoke to you yesterday as that nation convulsed in the wake of that assassination attempt. What have you made of the events and the reaction of the last 24 hours?
Oh, Kieran, I think the United States stands at a crossroads, frankly. There are two pathways, it seems to me, before the political leadership of the United States, and that is to continue the promising rhetoric of unity, of coming together to recognise this as an assault not just on Donald Trump and on his supporters in that crowd, but on democracy itself, and to continue that mode of conversation. Or to Republicans, I think that ball is in their court over the next 96 hours in Milwaukee. How they handle, I heard you talking to your previous guests, Kerry and Bruce Hawker, about this. This is an enormous political opportunity to be perfectly hard-headed about it for the Republican Party and for Donald Trump. But how he plays this moment, the language of retribution that has been a hallmark of his campaign for a return to the presidency. Does he go hard in that direction? And much might turn on how much we learn about the shooter and the rest of it. But I think we're at a real crossroads on how Republicans, I think in the first instance, in the next 96 hours, how they choose to talk about this event and what it means for the country going forward. It's their base who were victims yesterday. I think we'll be listening very carefully to the language coming out of Milwaukee as will the globe, over the next 96 hours.
He came so close to losing his life in that attempted assassination, but there would have been many, many more fatalities you would fear and suspect in the chaos that would have ensued if he was killed.
Oh, Kieran, what an amazing scenario to contemplate. I hadn't that occurred to me. Just what state the United States would be in, the sort of scenes we might. You're absolutely right. The scenes we might be seeing had in fact Donald Trump been assassinated yesterday. That's a scenario I hadn't thought of. Other scenarios, Kieran, that come to mind. Does the MAGA movement and Donald Trump just give up on the Secret Service, thinking that they're incapable or unwilling to protect the president and his family and indeed MAGA supporters? Is there some sort of unilateral, we have to secure our own events and literally that's the MAGA people start feeling they have to take matters into their own hands with respect to security at Trump events. That's another development that I've been sort of hypothesizing in my own mind about. But as I said, Kieran, I think we're at a crossroads. I think do we come back to democracy, the rule of law, the institutions, let the FBI do its investigation, a belief that generally and overwhelmingly, I think the evidence would support this, the Secret Service gets it right, or do we go in a different direction, one where I think this rhetoric about not that government itself is the problem, that there's retribution, that Trump will not be populating a second administration with deep state operatives, that is brought forward in the campaign, and indeed perhaps the leading edge of that might be the rhetoric we hear out of Milwaukee, and the way Republicans and Trump and his campaign organise events. I hope that's not the case, but things are so brittle at the moment over there, Kieran, and that scenario you just sort of put before me is horrific, and one I hadn't contemplated until you talked about it just then.
And when we think about this great country, our greatest ally, security protector and ally, you think about the history. It is a wonderful nation, but one littered with political violence from pretty much from the outset.
Yeah, and this is where I thought Bruce Hawker in the previous segment was spot on, Kieran. Political violence is not novel in the American story. The Civil War and the burdens of slavery, the stain of slavery, has never got off America's back. The political contours of the United States, North and South, still follow, to no small measure, the political contours laid down on the back of the Civil War in the 1860s and the inversion of where the major political parties stood on the question of racial equality in the 1960s, when Lyndon Johnson pivoted the Democratic Party to be the party of civil rights. The assassinations of the 60s, JFK through to Bobby Kennedy, Martin Luther King in there, the assassination attempt on Reagan, which was not political, which was motivated by a nutter trying to impress Jodie Foster. But what we forget is down ballot, the attack on Gabby Giffords in Arizona, the attack on the members of Congress playing baseball out in Northern Virginia only a few years ago. It is not uncommon in American public life. The attempted kidnapping of Governor Gretchen Whitmer, it is not at all uncommon in American public life for elected officials to experience not just a threat of violence, but actual violence. The presidential level is the one we're all focused on, and that's the one historians tend to gear us towards. But as a political scientist and surveying the occurrence of violence in American politics, it is not at all uncommon, Kieran. And again, we came literally within a millimetre of being what is now we're talking about in the context of a campaign, rather than the context of a catastrophe and a potential breakdown of civil order in the United States.
Indeed. Professor Jackman, I appreciate your insights as always.